everyone, welcome to Indie Game Award 2026. I have Thibaut from Beeswax Games today with me. Thank you for coming.
No, thank you for having me. Thank you.
Okay, so could you please introduce yourself and the Beeswax Games and the games No Players Online?
Yes, Beeswax Games is a very small team of 3 people from Belgium. This is our second commercial game. We've made Spookware, and now we've made No Players Online. It's a team with me and also Adam Pipe, my colleague. Both of us are like in the engine, making the game, art, programming, writing. We also have Victor Kraus, who's our musician, our composer, and the 3 of us kind of make all the games. For No Players Online, difficult to describe. I call it an experimental horror game. You find an abandoned computer belonging to a developer, and your goal is to kind of look through their files and see what kind of person they were, what they were working on, and it maybe turns a bit creepy. There's something off about the developer and about the computer. It's also a bit narrative. There's a whole story you can try and unravel.
So the concept of liminal space horror in video games are very popular now, right? But No Players Online takes it further by involving the players in the game, game's own broken code. So what inspired you guys to use aesthetics of a 90 FPS to tell such a haunting personal story?
Yeah, I mean, Adam and I, who are both, programming and doing the art, we both kind of grew up with a lot of the old FPS games like Counter-Strike and Quake and Garry's Mod as well. And we kind of both had this thing of being on an empty server in those kind of games always feels kind of creepy. There's something off about it, and we kind of wanted to channel that and this nostalgia, because we realize a lot of people have the same feeling where you have these old games and you're alone in these servers. There's always something creepy about it, and we kind of like doing our horror in a way where it's not in your face. And especially, with the abandoned server, it's not like anything scary in your face, but there's creepy sounds and something feels off. The atmosphere is very creepy, and we really like that, and we think the 90s aesthetic is very easy because nostalgia, I think, has some kind of creepiness to it, at least in the way we do it, where people are kind of unsettled, and we kind of like that vibe in our games.
Kind of creates this...
Yeah, people are on edge, and some people more than others. We've had people who aren't necessarily that scared of the game, but other people who are incredibly scared, and seeing, how different it can be from person to person is very fun for us as developers.
Yeah, so No Players Online presents itself as a horror experience, you would say that, but many players interpret it as a story about, grief and letting go. How did you guys design the mechanics and narrative elements to communicate the idea of letting go?
It was a lot of, thinking and on what to do, because for us, first of all, it presents itself, as you said, as like a horror game. But we are a team who likes narrative games as well. We did something very similar with our previous game where it looks like a cute horror game, but there's a story there. In terms of designing it, I think we designed with the story in mind first, as in this is a story we want to tell, and then kind of created a kind of creepy aesthetic and gameplay around it and packaged into something that people like to play. I think especially to better tell the story, we kind of built the whole desktop thing on top of it, because it allows us to very easily add more content. As in, we can create a desktop that belongs to this developer who is grieving and kind of create a story for him. And then we allow the players to kind of look through it at their own leisure. We don't really throw stuff at them.
Just unlimited.
Yeah, people can kind of look through files if they want, or they can play a game if they want. We don't really guide the player in that sense much.
Okay. So
they're free to do whatever they want.
Oh, wow.
Because you have some players who really like the story aspect and really dig into the files. Other players who prefer the horror aspect a bit more, just go straight into the games. So we kind of try and balance that to have something for everybody.
It's like finding treasure in an abandoned server.
Yeah.
Right. How did you expect players to emotionally process the absence of other players, and how does that connect to the theme of lost or isolation?
We always kind of wanted to have the player feel alone, but also feel like there's something there. And we have parts in the game where you are not alone. I think, especially in horror games, it's very difficult to kind of... Horror is kind of a place where you're alone, right? So it's always difficult to kind of set up something where the player shouldn't feel alone. But we've kind of not to spoil too much of the story,
No.
we kind of try and set up this thing the whole time where the player is confused on whether they are alone or whether they are not, so that when we finally do, a lot of the story reveals, it's not just us telling the story of the developer, but also the player kind of feels home in the story. And I
Right.
think we kind of go between horror and also the emotional note.
Right.
And
Jumping back and forth.
Yeah, and I think we found a very good balance between having the player be kind of on edge and maybe a bit scared, but
Yeah.
also very emotionally invested
Right.
into the game.
They will be like, okay, what am I going to
Yeah.
see next? So No Players Online was a short 2019 game jam hit. From jam to commercial success. What was the biggest challenge in expanding a 50 minutes classic into a full length?
Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of challenges because,
Right.
a 15-minute game to a 3-hour game is a lot of work. I think the biggest thing for us is the moment we knew we wanted to make it bigger, we wanted to really add the desktop environment, and that came with a lot of work. Maybe we didn't initially anticipate, because if you're going to be adding a whole desktop environment, you need to
Right.
populate it. It needs to
Yeah.
feel real and lived on. So it was a lot of extra story for us as, okay, we need to make John's desktop feel alive and real. And that was fun, but it was also a lot of work. I mean, on the other hand, that's a difficulty, but it also allowed us to do a lot of fun stuff.
Be
And
more creative?
yeah,
Would you
and
say?
experimental and innovative, I'd say. We really tried to push like the innovation, experimentalism
Right.
as much as we could. We were very lucky that we could. We wanted to keep the FPS kind of how it was before. It's like this small experience,
Right.
and then kind of build around it this whole game and desktop the players can go on.
Okay. The game blurs the line between the players and the developers and the software. So
Yes.
during the development, did you encounter any unique innovators, hurdles, like technically or narratively?
A little. I mean, I think we've encountered a hurdle a bit everywhere. As a game developer, it always happens. I think it kind of comes back to if you make a desktop and you want players to feel alive in it. There's a lot of work behind the scenes, and since you want the players to kind of combine games and separate them,
Yeah.
the scope of that can get big very quickly. If you make 2 games, they have to combine with each other. If you
Right.
make a 3rd game, everything still
need
kind
to
of
connect.
has to combine. And it was a lot of looking around for us and, okay, if we want this whole combining mechanic, how can we kind of do that without, either giving us too much work or the player too little content, for example. But on the other side, working with this system of we kind of allow the player to do anything, I think visually also, I make shaders, for example, making things that are broken is
Yeah.
very easy because a shader can be broken or not working correctly, and it kind of
Right.
works in the aesthetic of the game. So visually and in shaders and all that stuff, we had a lot of moments where we created something that was kind of broken, but we could leave it in because it kind of fits the aesthetic we've created. So
Right.
that also
That's
is
very smart.
it's very fun on the other side as well, where we can kind of break something and be like, oh, okay, this could maybe work, and the player would maybe find this interesting, and stuff like that. I think also, in terms of we allow the player to download games. You need a folder system, you need
Yeah.
readmes, and a lot of extra files you might not think of to make it feel realistic for the player, because we want them to be as immersive as possible. So a lot of extra stuff out of nowhere that you really kind of have to keep track of.
It's like a maze. Like you have to.
Yes, it's
go
a maze for the
around.
player, but also for us as developers, kind of. It's a lot of stuff to keep track of.
That's a lot of challenge.
Yeah.
So the full version introduced the soul fusion and soul transfer mechanic.
Yes.
Allowing players to merge games and create this corrupted
Yes.
amalgamation. This is a very innovative way to do it. How did you come up with this idea, and how does this tie to the game theme of digital occultism?
How do we come up with it? It was a while ago. I think this was one of the first things we thought of. The moment we knew we wanted to do a desktop, we wanted to have some sort of application that was very occult. And I think this soul transfer went through a lot of iterations. I think the first ever idea we had was kind of taking mechanics, specifically just a mechanic out of one game and putting it into another. And then we kind of decided if we want to tie it into John as a developer and occultism more, and especially our other character, Sarah, we should maybe scale it up a bit and have it, instead of just a mechanic, have it be souls that get transferred. It has a much more scary feeling to it and a bit more occult. And then we kind of went through a lot of different iterations on how we want to do it. And in the end, we thought the idea of just having two souls and combining them into like a completely new game is, I think, for a player the most fun to see how, you know, a Minesweeper and a dating sim could combine, for example. For a player, I think it's really nice to see just how crazy you can get. And I think, yeah, that's kind of what we wanted to do. We wanted to...
Making the players to think, okay, this is getting more interesting.
Yeah, and seeing people's reaction to being able to combine stuff as a developer is always really nice.
Let's talk about Indie Game Award. Like,
Yes.
winning the Best Innovative at Indie Game Award 2026, it's achievement, I could say.
It's an honor.
Yeah, your game is praised for using nostalgia, not just a coat of paint, but as a core emotional mechanic. What do you think this award says about the current appetite for weird?
I mean, I think it's people want it more than ever. I think for the past few years, indie games, and especially the indie horror scene, has really been pushing and being more innovative. And I think as an indie game, you kind of have to be. There's hundreds of games releasing every day, so you have to make something that's experimental or innovative. And I think horror is doing it really well. It's no longer just jump scares. There's a lot of other stuff going on. And I mean, winning an award like this, especially for us means a lot, because I think we kind of pride ourselves on being experimental. And especially with this game, we really try to push it as far as possible with, you know, games within games, and we also have the ARG outside of the game. And we really wanted to do as much as possible and really experiment. So to not only be nominated but win the award was for us like, wow, we're really happy and we made it. And it makes us feel like we kind of know what we're doing, as in we've been able to make these very experimental games and it still works for the players. And that's always really nice to see. Because we kind of always saw the game a bit more as art as well, besides just being a game. And we kind of also want to make art, you know, make people feel stuff. And I think nowadays indie games are doing a really good job. Just like being innovative and seeing it as an art form as well, which is really nice.
It's very inspiring for all the developers, you know.
Yes.
So the journey of No Players Online has been quite a ride, including some on-brand area experience from Steam. What is the next for BWAS games?
I mean, we still have some stuff planned with No Players Online. We released an ARG together with the release that was recently solved by the players, and we're currently working on the next steps. So there's still some more stuff in store for No Players Online. But besides that, we're also kind of experimenting with smaller games. I mean, we like making big games, and we've worked on No Players Online for 2 years, and Spookware before that was a year. But we feel like the industry is also kind of moving to smaller games and shorter experiences. So we kind of also want to experiment with, you know, maybe trying some smaller stuff again. That's kind of what we did in university. So we kind of want to move back to that. And smaller experiences, smaller like dev cycles, which is also a bit less risk as a developer, especially when your game suddenly disappears from the store page. It's a bit easier. We're going to try and experiment and kind of see what we want to make. But there's more in store.
But there's more for the players to, you know, explore the No Players Online.
Yeah, and definitely in No Players Online, there's a lot more in store.
Lastly, could you share like how did the team feel when they know that they had won the award?
I mean, very, very happy. I think it's especially as indie developers, it's not often that you get awards. And we've been very lucky to, you know, be able to travel around a bit for these events. It's also my first time in Taipei. But no, the whole team was very excited because I think we never expected this. I think because we're, you know, Belgium and Germany. If you asked me a few years ago that I would be in Taipei for an award show, I think I'd probably say that wouldn't be true. But it's a great honor and we're very, very happy. It's difficult to put into words because it really shows that, you know, even though we're working from Europe and we're a very small company, we can reach like audiences on the other side of the world. That's very kind of amazing to think about. It's really nice.
Okay, so the last question, would you like to share anything to our players or gamers?
I mean, just thanks so much for playing the game and enjoying it. We see the reviews and we really like, you know, all the positive reviews people have left and even the bug reports. You know, we do our best to fix anything that's broken. And we're still working on No Players Online, and we hope that the next things we bring out in terms of the ARG and the other stuff we've planned, we hope you all thoroughly enjoy it. And thank you so much for playing the game.
Thank you. That's all for today's interview. Thank you to both for joining us. Thank you. And see you in the next video. Bye.
Bye-bye.
That's all for today's video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And a quick heads up, the submission for Indie Game Award 2027 will open in July. Don't miss your chance to be part of the grand program. I will see you in the next video. Bye!